We are Greg and Leah, the host of Evolve, the #1 podcast about relationships, and not just the tender or toxic romantic ones, but all kinds of relationships with many people, places, and paths.
And we aren't here because we know or understand it all, simply because we are working to evolve and asking others to join the evolution.
So join us in this next episode of Evolve!
And welcome to another episode of Evolve with
Greg
and Leah. So today we are talking about listening to our bodies, how we've kind of evolved through a mindset that maybe we just lived, what would I say, like programmed and robotic, and sometimes we just did things because that's what we thought we were supposed to, or what people expected, or what we observed, and how have we changed, morphed, and how are we continuing to morph and evolve out of that, just doing what everyone says we're supposed to do, or doing what we think is supposed to happen, the way it's supposed to happen because everyone's programmed us that way, into really living and listening to our body.
Well, that's what we talk about here at Evolve, is coming out of old belief systems that do no longer serve us.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they don't serve, it didn't serve us, or they don't
and
serve
it could have
somebody
for a time.
else.
It's true.
And that's where and we were talking about in this episode with our listening to our bodies. When do you think? You've always listened to your body. I
I've been pretty good about it.
Talking about, listen to the sound this makes, and listen to this.
Well, I was like, I love the way my finger does. I remember something one time. I was like, I love the way my finger. And you're like, what are you doing?
Look at my stomach when it does this, and I was like,
yeah.
Oh, I was very intrigued by all that.
So I was very self-aware, but that doesn't mean I was always listening to my body.
Right.
And we will talk about this more in another episode, but like sex and sexuality, with coming from my background of abuse, you learn to cope by not listening to parts of your body. But you could also maybe say the same thing in other ways of like not listening to things in yourself, in your body, in your head, because maybe someone told you when you were very young to do something different than what felt natural.
Right.
And like maybe even behaviorally, like you were told to sit down, be still, when really your energy, you have a lot of energy. It wasn't built for that, just
right.
sitting and being still. So even that, like you've learned to cope with different mannerisms, behaviors, how to keep them under wraps and keep them under control so that you can be what everyone wanted you to be.
Right.
Or like in your case, we talked in one of the other previous episodes, I believe, maybe even multiple times, we've talked about you doing something so you didn't get in trouble.
Right.
So I think we all do it, but learning to listen to our body is, yes, I've been self-aware, but like really listening to my body and letting it help me make better decisions physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I feel is maybe a little more new.
So
I'm not sure.
I think you and I both were brought up in this mindset of I have a soul, I live in the body, and I have a mind and a will and emotions, like a three-part being kind of
Which
thing.
I don't disagree still. Like I do feel like we're pieces, but
I think that I haven't that. Well, when you start realizing that we're connected to everything, your body has every cell in your body has a mind of its own. It's always working when you're not.
Right, like little factories. Oh, that reminds me of that show, Osmosis Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I wish they made a series of that for people, even adults. Osmosis Jones was a great cartoon about that.
Yeah, that was
all the systems in your body.
But when you start, people may. I guess we do listen to our bodies, but not. We ignore so many things. Like we'll say we're hungry. We pretty much know that. But what about an ache or a pain or even an intuition of a thought?
Yeah,
that comes up, or your body's in connection, and if you just actually listen to it, I mean, I think the first time that, when we started doing yoga and going stretching and realizing,
which was probably 5 or so years ago,
and learning certain things, and at the same time, that one book, the 5 Agreements for.
Oh, the 4 Agreements, yeah.
Yeah, that's when I was. I guess an awakened moment was realizing that I am not my thoughts. That I'm not.
Yeah, I feel like.
What was I? That was a question, or I still have that.
If you're not your thoughts,
where am I?
What
am I?
Well, I've heard it said recently a lot from a lot of our friends up in the community garden and like web of connection and stuff that say we are feeling beings that think, not thinking beings that feel. Is that the right way to say it? I forget which way it goes. No.
Oh, you
I
caught on
liked
to that.
it. Yeah, I liked it, whatever it was. But that we are not our thoughts. It's true. Those are just like, if you think about like things that we sit by the creek that's by the house here, and stuff washes down regularly. If we saw our thoughts as just that, instead of always attaching to them and thinking. And I think really for you, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but one of your big aha moments was more than 5 years ago, maybe almost 10 years ago, that we were all sitting outside and you said, I'm an angry person, and identified your behavior and your actions as the who you were. And I think that started to, though I don't agree that you are an angry person in the sense of like, anger is...
I carried a lot of angry energy.
Yeah.
And
but it didn't mean that's the being you are.
I think I used anger, and I think a lot of people will do that as well. I'm not saying I'm recovered from that, but using anger to expel my energy. And what it would happen would be I would dump all over everybody else in the room, and all of a sudden I'm better. Oh, everything's fine, and I've already exploded.
I listened to my body. I'm better, and as all these dead bodies and what you left in your wake.
Rather than using anger, redirect it elsewhere, or not even get to the point to be angry. It's not necessary. I mean, I guess... Yeah.
Well, and that's where, like I said, like 10 years ago or something, sitting on the patio with the whole family one night, and you were like, I guess I'm an angry person. Like, I just feel angry all the time. I think that was a beginning of a transformation for you.
Right.
That was like a very first, like, self-awareness moment. But I'd also think that you've been working in the last 10 years since then of not identifying with your behaviors. Your behavior isn't you. Your thoughts aren't you.
Right.
But I feel like that was a really, like, all of us around were like, even yourself, when you said it out loud, you were like, oh, I think I just said something that really meant something there. Right. Really had my own aha moment, my own revelation about this. But listening to our body, I want to get back to what you just said, like that we all have this, but if we don't give it the space, it's easily overridden. Your intuition is not loud. It is not screaming at us. It's not going to push its way in. It's that still small voice, as we might have called it, a long time ago. And society, our upbringing, ourselves will silence it and do whatever else we think is supposed to be better for that moment, that person, that space. So we have come so far away from it. Same as, like, we're going to talk another episode about nature and getting back to nature. Like, we're so disconnected from these basic primal things like nature and trusting your intuition and instinct, and that we have to work hard to get back to it. So how would you say that you've been working to get back to trusting your intuition and listening to your body?
Well, with the yoga, in doing yoga, that's one thing you get a chance to do almost a body scan.
It's like exercise and meditation all at once.
Meditation.
Yeah.
So those two things, and most of the instructors, especially the one down in South Florida she always was like, how does your body feel this morning? And listen to what it has to say.
Right.
And what, sometimes it has cravings, sometimes it's your brain, and you have this mental fight that you shouldn't be eating fried chicken at 8:00 at night. Yeah.
Sounds like a personal experience.
Or even your body. I mean, if we listen to our body, or even washed our body, I remember as doing yoga, you get to see your toes and realize, wow, maybe I'm not as healthy as I think I am. When
fingernails, toenails, these are good indicators of your health.
Think about, I remember watching some movie, and the way that they determined the value of the person when they came over from, it was a slavery movie, they were checking their feet and their toes and their mouth and their teeth
and stuff,
as whether they were sick or not. And I thankful I'm getting, I've eaten healthy for a good
healthier
for a good portion of
we
our
go back and
marriage.
Forth on that one.
There's nothing to pat myself on the back for.
So for you then, getting back to the answer to the question, yoga was and is one of the first and introductory steps to, like, hey, this is my body, and appreciate it, and listen to it.
I've always exercised, and I found myself exercising as one way to outlet my energy that I had, sports and racquetball, that kind of thing. That we,
Oh, yeah.
high intense energy.
Those are good for people with high energy.
And so those things worked well. So I was always burning a lot of calories, whether it's mental or physical.
Both.
And so, but sooner or later, your diet and all those things can catch up to you. I mean, so.
Well, and I would say the answer for myself, in asking myself, like, what has been... I mean, yes, I agree with you. I didn't think about yoga because that does require a lot of presentness of, like, what am I feeling right now? And also sitting with the discomfort. I remember when we had a substitute teacher in that first yoga class years and years ago, and he did, like... I'm sure it has a name, a different kind of yoga where you hold the stretch for like minutes.
Some people say
and that's very hard.
It's not even worth
very
bothering
uncomfortable
unless you hold the stretch for at least, I think, a minute.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I felt like that was the hardest class I've ever done, with just putting yourself in a position that your body feels like it's screaming, "Get me out of here." Your brain is even collaborating with that thought and saying, "Yeah, we don't like this. Let's change positions." But it's also something that, yoga, but I want to also say, like, I've done cold showers, like ending my hot shower with a really cold shower for years now.
But that's not really, that's not listening to your body. That's training your body.
It's training my body. But you're also listening at the same time, I feel like. So I am listening to, like, oh, wow, how does this feel right now? It requires you to be very present. And in order to listen to your body, you have to be very present moment minded, I should say.
I think meditation is very... Well, when I started the chakra meditations, you found out imbalances in your certain chakras that were energy sources that, wow, because at the same time saying I was an angry person, we were
incorporating these things,
these colors and other things, and so I realized that my reason I had such gastral issues as a young man, and not as much anymore, but at that time, was because that's one area, the solar
plexus is all around that area, as well as
the orange and the red, and that's in that area.
Red is root chakra.
Red is root chakra, but the one above that was, inflamed, and so not inflamed. I just
out of balance.
Which
we also did a little bit of not deep diving. Shallow scuba. What's that called? Skimming. What is that called when you snorkeling?
Snorkeling.
Yeah, we didn't deep dive. We snorkeled on the surface of, like, Ayurvedic medicine.
Yeah.
That was also another thing for me, that to start listening to your body and also learning your body type, your style, your pitta, your now I forget. Oh my gosh. Now that sounds. But we went through. We just started learning a lot of alternative modalities. But yeah, I've always been a little bit self-aware. But I haven't until recently, I would say, in the last year, the most in-depth, I will say, like, really listened to my body and supported what it needed instead of what my programming might have said.
Right.
And those could be things like just simple things, like even this morning during my journal/meditation time, I just felt like having my hands in a certain position and then doing breathing, and I could just even hear my intuition saying, okay, now it's time for a deep breath. And it's, like I said, it's very subtle, very quiet, never pushy. It is I think one of the Bible verses from our history was Ezekiel, maybe, or someone, where it's like, God wasn't in the wind, and he wasn't in the storm, and he wasn't over in this. He was in the calm after and in between all those chaotic events. And to me, that's what intuition is at this point in our life, of what our beliefs have evolved into. And just one of the things that has always kept me somewhat grounded and self-aware is being outside and connecting with nature in that way. I think there's huge healing benefits for me that I've had from that. I don't really know where I'd be if I didn't have the self-awareness, and if I didn't have, my alone time, even as a kid. Like, I just always had those things. So I think I did a 50-50 of listening to my body and being, even as a young person, but then the other half of that percent was burying some of the difficult things, because something that I've come up with recently that's happened is realizing how much tension I have in my shoulders. And I've talked to you about this before, and that, like, the joke is in our wedding photo that I'm like, my shoulders are in my ears, And my saying to that is, everyone kept telling me to hold the bouquet higher, hold it higher. And for some reason, my shoulders went up instead of just my elbows lifting the bouquet. So I have a whole, wedding, the pre-walking down the aisle photos where my shoulders are up like this. But going back to the shoulders, like I've realized like how tense certain muscles are in my body and have been for years. And now, only recently, am I coming into this awareness of like, hey, why is that there? What is my body trying to tell me? Like you said earlier.
Well, if there was energy that wasn't released in a certain area of your body.
Wow, you're so smart.
Then
I'm just
stored energy, which is causing stress.
I'm only mocking him because I just told him this based off of somatic healing and somatic exercises and reading and listening to Peter Levine's book.
Just like the books that come to my land in my hands.
It's always magically appearing.
I believe in magic.
Well, actually, you said right before we hit record we were talking about book recs because we want to recommend a resource, if not a book, a resource every time. So that way everyone listening can explore themselves for themselves. And these are just resources that we've found as really amazing. But you had made a mention right before, like I've actually just so many of the books you're saying, because I'm going through my Goodreads list of all the books and stuff, I've gleaned a lot from me. You've gleaned a lot from me reading them and telling you about them.
Yeah, any book you read, I gain knowledge by proxy.
And vice versa, I would say.
Which is good because you read the words copyright 1945.
I read page to page, cover to cover.
Cover to cover.
Pretty much.
So I appreciate that you read it and tell me about it because, like I said,
give you the
I've said it before. These authors, man, they write a good thing. You got an author. They got hook.
I do want to say
and
this.
Then two chapters in, they keep saying the same things over.
So I want to say this, and I talked about this. I started a podcast of myself years ago called Flower Girl Rescue, and they were quick 6-minute like little on the moment, no editing, just recording and plopping them on to Audacity.
Kind of like now.
And there's a little bit of thought here now, but one of the things I had said was giving the permission to myself and the liberty it gave me to not finish a book. That if you get something out of it, that's what you're meant to get out of it. And maybe it's just from the first chapter or
sometimes it's just by reading it on a bookshelf that it gives you an inspiration.
It hit something with you, resonated. Right. So, but yeah, just I think getting back to the topic of listening to our body, that I think it's not always easy. So like you mentioned earlier, cravings. And cravings also just come from patterns. We always have dessert at this time, and the sugar tells me I need it. And let's be honest, sugar's even more addicting, I've heard, than cocaine or heroin. I mean, it's just super addicting. So our brain, our body is going to say, we need this.
Is that our body or our...
And that's what I want to clarify. When we say listening to our bodies, what are we really meaning?
I would say more probably by the signs that it's actually telling you. Like, okay, so you look at your fingernails, you feel an ache in your body, or when we do meditation, sometimes they say do a body scan. Yeah. So I always imagine, like, from the top of my head, this circle of I always picture a laser kind of going.
Exactly,
that's exactly what I picture. It's like a laser, like on Tron.
Oh boy, yeah.
It just kind of scans my body, and if I start listening, why? Oh wow, I have. How many times have I've come home from work and my arm's bleeding, and you're like, how did that happen?
And you never seem to freaking know.
No idea until you just showed me that I was even hurt.
I just don't even understand that.
I don't know how. I mean, so I wasn't paying attention to my body. Obviously, I wasn't even looking at it.
And that's just amazing. That's the power of your mind at times too. That we can actually be having a physical negative experience, and because of where our mindset is at the time, where our focus is at the time, completely not even feel that. And sometimes that can be a good thing, a protective mechanism. Like if your arm is cut off at your job, like the shock prevents you from feeling that immediate pain, which is good, because if you felt immediate pain, you'd probably not make it. So there is times that disconnect benefits humanity and ourselves.
If your mind is so focused
there's that
on
point to
something,
reconnect.
You weren't present if you cut your arm and you didn't even feel it. It's a part of your body. That's kind of not being present at all. It's almost...
Well, I would say for those, this is a great little segue here, or not segue, but like a little bunny trail maybe, that in that example, where was your mind at when maybe something happened on your body?
I don't know.
Getting the job done and getting home and being done here?
Probably
Possibly?
all the time.
So you weren't in the moment. You're trying to hurry and get through the moment to just get back to like, I want to get home. I want to rest. I want to not be at this job. I want to like, just to get through here. So your brain wasn't being very present. Something that I think we've been working on a lot more in recent year or two is just being that present and being right here, right now. And that's not always comfortable, because your body, when you do that body scan, you might find things that you feel uncomfortable about, physically, emotionally, spiritually, or mentally. Because I feel like when I say listen to my body, I'm taking all those into account.
Right, the 5 senses we've been given. Or
not just that, but also, emotionally. Like,
Emotionally?
what am I feeling right now emotionally, and why am I feeling this? Like, we've talked about that before, when you start scanning emotions and asking why.
In your class you're taking, I happened to overhear the one lady talk about when something occurs in her life, and it could be anything, where she actually will do a scan of her heart. How did that affect her heart? Mm-hmm. How did this affect me whenever someone says something this way, or what's happening to my body when I'm irritated?
Do you not do that?
So now,
I would say I'm more recently doing it for sure.
And when I say listening to our body, when I become irritated, I ask, instead of trying to reel it back and say, why am I irritated?
Right.
What's the cause of the irritation? Because if I'm irritated with someone, that means something in them I'm reflecting that
you don't like about yourself.
That I don't like about myself.
So I want to hit that, because actually I was texting with someone this morning about this, and about there being a balance between if it's you, or if it's also that maybe a boundary is being crossed in your life that doesn't need to be. Because that's it can almost feel like a gray line. So what I had texted to them back was, a good indication that I use to know if it's a me problem that needs to be addressed, versus, hey, they're crossing a boundary and that's making me uncomfortable, or that's frustrating me, so the boundary needs to be established, reminded, whatever. That's not a bad thing. But for me, what I said was to know if it's actually the me problem is, how does it feel in me? And I can tell you personally, like, my feeling when I know it's a me problem or it's a mindset issue that I have to work through in myself, is my body temperature feels to go like up, like as if my blood pressure is increasing. And like in this whole center feels like my chest and everything is constricted, but also like prickly, I guess is the way to say it. So like, it's kind of in the past, our past life, we would be like, is the Holy Spirit, do you have like what was it called? Do you have a check in your spirit kind of thing?
Unction.
But like, it was a check in your spirit was more used when it was something like a radar, wrong. Like, hey, something's wrong here, and it's not me. This I'm talking about. Yeah, the tingle in my tail from over the hedge. But I can only speak for myself. Like, when I know it's me, like, there's this irritability in my center, in my chest.
See, mine's
when
more
it's boundary,
low down here when I get mad or upset.
Yeah, mine tends to be right here, right on my sternum, like under my sternum. But again, everyone's might be different in it. Maybe someone's arm would feel numb, or like somewhere would feel a tingle or feel hot, or like I said, some different sensation that like, okay, this is a me thing. My body's reacting to this negatively because there's still something in me that has to be addressed, versus a much calmer, peaceful feeling when it's a boundary or like something that's outside of me. The other recent episode, we talked about stoicism and just keeping that look. It's like an external look of, you're just not so emotionally dramatic and seesawing up and down. It's a much more balanced thing. Like, if there is a situation in my life that just feels a little off, like, hey, this is not a me problem. This is an energy problem from someone else. Like, I'm not supposed to have this connection. We don't have the right vibe. Like, I need to cut this relationship off. Like, those don't feel as affronting and as physically exhausting, maybe. Like, I don't know, I feel like when you're listening to your intuition, like I said, getting back to like this more peaceful, like, there's never pressure, stress, or anxiety to my intuition. Would you agree, disagree?
I agree. Absolutely. I guess it's, to say it another way is what do you have control over? Complete control.
You can control your emotions in your body.
Yes.
So like, even if it is a me problem, I can take a breath. I can count, remove myself from the situation, count to 90 because emotions only last 90 seconds. Like, there is things we can control for sure. I can control if I want to change the behavior that I'm seeing in someone else that's irritating me because it's reminding me of me. I can take the time to process if there is a problem here.
Analyze it. Maybe you're just having haven't have enough sleep last night, or
you need some food.
You need some food.
It's true.
You just have a divorce and you need a sandwich.
I will say something I read a long time ago said, when you are trying to get off sugar, for example, to have an apple instead. That to curb your cravings, you have to do something else. Not just think, because if you've ever tried to diet or if you ever tried to change a dietary habit, what happens in your brain is like, I'm not going to have sugar, I'm not going to have sugar, or I'm not going to drink beer, I'm not going to drink beer, I'm not going to drink beer. So you're still thinking about what you don't want,
right,
which creates in you a deeper level of the craving, which creates in you this failing cycle like you can never get out of. So instead of doing that, replace your habit, replace your behaviors. And another thing I heard one time too is sometimes when we're so used to like, oh, this is how I feel when I'm hungry, or this is how I feel when XYZ. Take a drink of water first. Like, drink a full cup of water. That, sometimes our bodies, we've misunderstood because we're not listening to them, the physical part of our bodies. We've misunderstood the signals that are coming. So like we've talked about in the past before, that like when something's coming out of our body, let's say a rash, that's just what the end result is, so
right,
to speak. There's a deeper problem internally. It could be immune system. It could be something inside, and like a histamine issue. But that's just the end result. This is just what I'm seeing. And this is, again, a physical thing we're talking about that is due to listening to our body, of just diving in a little deeper and seeing what am I lacking? What am I needing to do? What do I need to adjust or change? And I think the same principle works for mental moments of listening to, if I'm feeling depressed or overwhelmed, or like sit down with myself, get away from everything, and take that space.
As I exercise most every day, I listen to this guy.
So here's recommendation number 1.
Recommendation, yeah, he's his Apple Music, I guess.
Okay, so you're talking like it sounds like a record is broken, or like someone's CD is skipping. That record.
Anyway, he does I am affirmations. His channel, that's what I was trying to get. His channel
okay.
is called Power Thoughts Meditation Club, and I like his accent, I really do. But his name is Kenneth, I think. Yeah. It
doesn't say on there?
No, it doesn't. But
so if you go to Apple Music, or if it's also on YouTube, maybe?
I think it's on Spotify. Power Thoughts Meditation Club.
Power Thoughts Meditation Club.
But now that I tried to promote that, I forgot what I was going to say about it.
I'll just let you play this during a workout, and are you working on it reprogramming your...
Well, I was going to say some of the things that he says, that, that each cell in our body has a mind of its own. It's working for my benefit. This is the body that I've been given,
right?
And so one of the think about, even at the church level, this was the temple of the Holy Spirit, which I agree completely. There's a temple of my holiness, and what we've seen buildings that don't have maintenance taken care of. They deteriorate and fall apart, and without proper maintenance, what is it? An ounce of an ounce of maintenance is worth a pound of cure.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're saying a little differently, but yeah.
So, how just looking around, or just looking at ourselves. Don't look at anybody else. Look at ourselves, and what could we do to just listen to our bodies more, on a healthier side.
And that's the physical side
Listening
of
to
stuff.
your body crave chocolate at 11 o'clock at night is not
not necessarily what it's asking for. Like it's asking for it possibly because of the chemical release you get from having that, satiating that need.
And we are
But
nothing but a chemical,
maybe it needs something different.
petri dish, and like, well, I'm learning how to take care of pools right now, just studying that kind of thing, and pH,
Finding the balances,
chlorine and clarifier, and pH up and pH down. It's all important, and when every time we take a drink of whiskey, wine, water, it changes the pH or changes
Soda,
the chemical
Yeah.
chemistry of our bodies, and that has effects, either good or bad.
Well, and I would like to recommend, that's your rec for today. I want to recommend a book that I'm still in the middle of reading because it's something kind of like your other book you shared in the last episode, the Stoicism book. This is something that you don't read from cover to cover. It's not a fiction that you're just like, oh, what's the rest of this story? It requires like breaking things down and implementing practices. And my rec is Intu-witch-ion, which is by Mia Magik. And she pretty much, I guess you would say, calls herself a witch. But she is just really more about returning to ourself, listening to ourselves, listening to our body, returning to nature, listening to it, and all the ways we can be healed from doing those things, of listening back to ourselves and listening to nature. And like I said, one of the things that I was sharing a second ago was about my shoulders and how, like, wow, why am I carrying so much tension here? And, Peter Levine and different people with somatic exercises and that work somatic healing, they talk about how trauma is a physiological thing, like a physical thing, more so than a mental thing, and how finding that trauma in your body and working it out, working it through. And one of the ways that I've been trying to focus on that is just really talking to my body and saying, like, hey, shoulders, I feel that you're tense. What's going on? Like, what do I need to do? And asking yourself, what do I need here? Because you might be in a place where you're like, I don't even know. I mean, I've always used this. I don't know what to use if I don't do this. I've always eaten that. I don't know what to do if I don't eat that. I've always thought this way. What do I do? So sitting and having that silence. Another really good book rec, I will say, is The Listening Path by Julia Cameron. Learning to listen. The very first things that comes up with is sitting with yourself. Learning to listen to yourself, learning to listen even to silence. These are things that are not taught anywhere.
No.
And we have to,
TV and
we have to get back to this. The noise is everywhere.
There's a reason why they're called TV programs.
Right?
Programming. They've been programming us since we were born.
Childs. Yeah. And not just them programming, but then, generations before us who have been programmed by not just media, but their environment, their culture, and then we just keep dumping that into the next generation. And I mean, that's why we started Evolve, was talking about how can we transition out of archaic, unserving thoughts and ways, behaviors, beliefs, into a more, I guess I'll use the word enlightened, but like peaceful. Just more peaceful people, because as I'm more peaceful, you're going to be more, it's like going to ripple out, and we can only improve our society. So those are my two book recs. We are at a little past 30 minutes already now, but I feel like there's still more we could dive into on listening to our bodies, because there is so much there, but really, we're not here to give all the answers or to even share all of our stories. We're here just to say, hey, here's some of ours.
Here's a topic. Let's hear what you got to say.
Yeah.
So,
how about you,
subscribe and share.
Like, subscribe, share, and comment. That's the one that you always say all the time, too. So, yeah, start listening to your body. Start tuning into what you need physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Change the programming if it is not serving you anymore. And yeah, our recommendations, you heard them from us, but we'd love to hear what you have as well. So until next time,
see ya.
See you later, and be evolving, people.